Welcome to Flat Ride of the Week, episode 15. Today we'll be talking about the long overdue shot and drop towers. If you want to hear more about the freefall type towers, such as those made by Intamin, please check out Flat Ride of the Week, episode 3, linked in the description. As always, if we forget something or say something that's incorrect, please politely correct us in the comment section below. Let's get started. Alright, so let's get started with the history. So SNS made the first of these types of rides, so we're going to start with them. The first model they produced was the Space Shot. And this was designed in 1994. It was actually SNS's first ride they ever designed. The first one that we know of was either one that was sold to the infamous Action Park, or it may have been Detonator at Worlds of Fun. They originally ranged in height from 165 feet, or about 50 meters, to 185 feet, or 56 meters, and that's for the single tower version, with an additional 35 feet, or 10.5 meters of unused tower and decoration on the top. Its original programming, the ride accelerates from 0 to 40 miles per hour, which is 64 kilometers per hour upwards, using compressed air. This gives a force of about 4 Gs. Once at the top of the ride, the riders will drop with a force of about -1 Gs according to SNS, although I don't believe that. And that's just a normal free fall. The ride can be ordered with either 12 or 16-person gondolas. Moving on, we have the Turbo Drop, which is SNS's second model of drop tower. This is basically a space shot turned upside down. The ride starts with a real slow ascent up to a maximum of, just like the other one, 185 feet or 56 meters on the single tower versions. After a brief pause at the top, the compressed air builds up enough and the gondola is shot downwards faster than gravity at 40 miles per hour, again 64 kilometers per hour. I say faster than gravity because this is really only true at the top of the ride. When the ride starts, you're shot down faster than gravity, but after a few seconds, the limits imposed by this type of ride system kick in, and you start to fall at what at least feels like slower than gravity. Otherwise, all the other statistics are same as the Space Shot, including capacity. Then you have the Double Shot, which ranges in height from 70 feet, or 21 meters, to 80 feet, or 24.5 meters. The Double Shot is an attempt to combine the other two SNS towers into one. So riders experience a 30 mile per hour shot to the ride's maximum height, followed by a air-powered drop similar to the Turbo Drop. Then it actually does that cycle one more time, at least with the original programming. Due to the ride's short height and the short duration of the negative Gs, that sort of combines to cause a lot of riders to report that these smaller towers are a lot more thrilling than the taller ones. This one only comes with 12 passenger gondolas. Now, an interesting thing with this one is, there's all these positive things I just named about it compared to the other two ones. So why aren't they more popular? Well, my guess, capacity is one thing, but my guess would be what El Toro Ryan would say, slow fat park guests, because the Double Shot can carry a maximum of 2,040 pounds worth of guests per cycle. Dividing that by the 12 seats means that each guest average weight should be around 170 pounds. And unfortunately, the average American as of 2019 weighs just over 197 pounds. So that unfortunately means that a lot of these are probably getting excess wear and tear, for one, and additionally they may have to walk of shame a lot more people, which should not be very fun for both the ride operators and the parks to deal with. So it seems likely that has reduced this ride's appeal to a lot of parks. Then we have the Combo Tower, which is a Space Shot and a Turbo Drop put into one, much like the other one, but this one is actually taller. Unlike Double Shot Tower, it only does one cycle, and like I said, same height range as the Space Shot. Interestingly, this one actually comes with 16-seat gondolas, which actually the ride itself has the same weight requirement as the one I just mentioned. So you end up with like 127 pounds, as should be the average weight for each guest, which is very unlikely. So I can see why not many of them were sold. Then we have the Multi-Tower Complex. This is the final and probably the most iconic SNS model. Obviously, this comes in a complex of 2 to 4 towers, and obviously gets better capacity because of that. These multi-tower complexes also allow for taller towers, so you get a height range in between 165 feet or 50 meters to 245 feet or 74 6.5 meters, and that is if you're just counting the drops themselves, not counting the actual height of the tower, which is taller, because like the other one, if you include the crown of the tower, it goes up to a maximum of 312 feet or 95 meters. They can have any combination of the towers we just mentioned. So all the ones previously you can put in, you can have 4 different types. Well, there's only 3 different types, but but you can have any combination of those. I think a common one is space shot and turbo drop. So 2 of each or 1 of each or whatever the park requests really. Each individual tower actually has its own control panel. Meaning that for safe operation, where you have maximum visibility of the tower, you need at least 3 ride operators per tower. Now, this obviously causes a lot of staffing problems, high staffing costs, which is why oftentimes you'll go to parks that have these and they'll only be operating like half of them, or maybe even just 1 of them. Each tower can be configured with 12 or 16 person gondolas. And I think that is about it. I think we'll move on now to their biggest competition, which I think would be Huss, correct?
Well, kind of. Haas didn't make that much of them. But anyway, Haas introduced the shot and drop model in 1997. It is 43 meter or 140 feet tall, and it has a capacity of 24 riders per cycle. The gondola can be shot upwards at the same acceleration and speed as it descends. The gondola can be stopped anywhere and it can bounce smoothly, so you can do a lot of different things with the cycle. It was available as both transportable and permanent version, but nowadays they only produce permanent versions. The first Haas shot and drop tower was sold to German showman Gutzke in 1997, and they traveled with it on the German fair circuit until 2009. Then it was sold to Adventure World in Australia. Only 3 transportable shot and drops were produced, and about 6 permanent versions were built. And then in 2004, the shot and drop Maxi made its debut at the Space Center in Bremen, Germany. The shot and drop Maxi is the exact same concept as the normal shot and drop, but it's taller and it has a higher capacity. So it's 58 meters or 190 feet tall, and it fits 28 people. This model is only available as permanent version, and it's still in production. But only 2 of them have been built, and they're both not operating anymore. The one from Space Center Bremen is currently disassembled and rusting away near the former park site. And the second one opened in 2010 at Ferrari World in Abu Dhabi, and it closed around 2016, and it got scrapped and it got replaced by TurboTrack, some kind of Intamin shuttle launch coaster.
All right. Then we move on to the competition. We have the Intamin Ballistic Tower, which can be made in any height the park requests. Much like the SNS one, it uses air pressure, but this one also uses magnetic brakes at the top and bottom of the tower. That's right, at the top of the tower. According to Intamin, that's in the unlikely event that it shoots too high. The ride cycle can include any of the following elements: shot up, shot down, free fall down, and bounce. The ride also has a higher capacity than the SNS models, fitting 20 riders per cycle.
Then the Zamperla Z Max. It was a new model for 2019. It ranges in height from 56 meters or 184 feet to 80 meters or 363 feet. The tower for the ride itself rotates, and as of early 2020, only one has been sold to Sarkaniemi in Finland.
All right, and then for all you Chinese coasters and flat ride fans out there, you might recognize this one. G-Pow, Chinese manufacturer that has made at least one shot and drop tower. The Chinese manufacturers really love these things. They made at least one shot and drop tower, and as you can see by this video, it looks intense, man. That drop looks like it pulls like -2 Gs possibly. Like, man, that looks better than any of the Western designs, although probably a lot less safe too.
Lots of other Chinese manufacturers have made knockoffs from SNS's design, like MCC and Sameco. So, like, some of them even have the double shut and drop next to each other. Not much other manufacturers have that.
Yeah, very popular in East Asia, especially among these Chinese knockoff manufacturers. A lot of Chinese parks have them. Whether they're real or knockoff, they are pretty interesting rides. All right, and then on to some other interesting facts.
A lot of these SNS towers have been reprogrammed over the years, causing them to have less intense cycles than they originally did.
This is really noticeable on some, like at Darien Lakes. Apparently, it used to give great, amazing airtime, but when I rode it in late 2019, it was absolutely forceless. And then moving on, in January 2018, SNS ordered that every tower had to change its restraints to increase redundancy. This was because the original hydraulic restraints in these towers were not redundant and could occasionally open to the minimum closed position during the ride. They gave the parks 3 options. They could either buy new redundant hydraulic restraints from SNS, or they could remove the hydraulic part of the restraint and replace it with a twin ratcheting system. Or the cheapest option that a lot of less well-off parks went with was to add a seatbelt that goes across the rider's lap. If any park or fairground failed to do any of these 3 things, one of these 3 things, it is out of code and shouldn't be operated. I know Cedar Fair went with the replace it with a ratcheting system. I know Six Flags Darien Lake went with a seatbelt, and so did Indiana Beach. Their drop tower has a bit of an interesting story with it. If there is a video out there online, I'll try and link it in the description if I can find it. But basically, I don't know, they probably have fixed it by now with all the things that have happened with that park, but one of the seats on it just flat out does not lock. And so it really only has the seatbelt holding you down. It's crazy. You must get some crazy airtime on it. I almost hope it's still broken so I can ride it like that. And then the last interesting thing is, many of you probably know that these larger Intamin towers have an elevator or just ladders inside where you can get to the top. Well, you may be wondering, how do they do it on an SNS tower? Because you obviously have to go up there and work on things. Well, I've seen it actually done where the gondolas themselves serve as an elevator. So a maintenance guy does whatever. The gondola goes up to about the height of a human. The maintenance guy walks behind, the gondola drops down. Maintenance guy stands on the gondola's inside, and then the gondola slowly rises to the top. And he just sits, you standing there on the gondola. It's pretty weird, and I honestly would not want to do it because, it's a drop tower. It's designed to drop, so I would be scared you're working there and it suddenly just drops, but obviously it's worked so far. But yeah, that's the interesting thing about some of these rides. If you've not ridden one, these SNS towers in particular, they're a lot less intense than they look, so if you want to break your fear of a drop tower, I strongly recommend you ride one. Do you have anything else to add, Alex?
Well, yeah, again, as you said, if you see one, be sure to ride it. Here in Europe, we don't have much SNS. We have at Parky Warner, we have 3 of them. And there's one at Wiener Prowler that I rode. It was my first SNS, and I found it really intense. The shot was very good and it gave some good airtime. So I was really surprised because I thought it would be worse than a Haas one. But actually, I might even prefer the SNS one to the Haas one.
And it does seem that the shorter the tower, the more intense, and the single towers seem more intense than the multi-tower complexes for sure. So if you see a tower that's, especially if it's a multi-tower complex, I guarantee you it's probably pretty forceless in the US, so go ride it. You may break your fear of drop towers if you haven't already. That's how I did on Power Tower at Cedar Point. Very weak ride. And the shot side provides almost no airtime in the US on a lot of these combo towers, which is a good thing and a bad thing. So if you want to break your fear, I do recommend trying it. I think that's all we have for this episode of Flat Ride of the Week. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week.